and welcome to Season 4 of Lightwork Presents Everything is Connected, where we share the interesting and inspiring stories of artists, critical thinkers, thought leaders, and art professionals on a wide range of topics about life, work, society, success, failure, and the ways in which we navigate the journey. We share ideas on our inspirations and the influences that affect our lives. I'm your host, Folasade Ologundudu, and I look forward to sharing the conversations that I have with artists and creative professionals across the art industry and beyond. As I travel to art fairs, gallery openings, and events within the creative industries both in the U.S. and abroad, join me in discovering and learning about some of today's most interesting and dynamic artists and creative professionals. If you're new to the show, I'm happy to have you here. If you've been on this journey with me, welcome back. Let's get it. On this episode, I'm joined by Kandy G Lopez as we discuss her practice on the eve of the closing of her two-person show with Aminah Robinson at ACA Galleries in Chelsea. In the exhibition, viewers were presented with her mixed media, fiber, and stained glass works. On the show, we discuss themes of identity and empowerment. Lopez tends to center her work around themes of identity and community, focusing on the everyday person and honoring their stories. We also speak about portraiture, and she describes herself as a portrait maker using various media, including painting, printmaking, collage, stained glass, and fiber art to bring her subjects to life. We discuss social and cultural themes like gentrification, community resilience, and the impact of cultural and historical identities, especially around issues of race, heritage, and urban life. And lastly, we discuss some of her current and future projects. Lopez has upcoming works which include a focus on her Caribbean identity and a series of Dominican dolls reflecting on her exploration of cultural heritage and personal identity. Let's dive into my next episode with Kandy G Lopez. Can you state your name and how you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, my name is Kandy G Lopez. I am a portrait maker. I'm also a mother and a professor.
Incredible. Let's jump right in. Kandy G Lopez, thank you so much for joining me on an episode of Everything is Connected. You have a show that was that closed very recently at ACA Galleries, We the People. It was a two-person show with you and Aminah Robinson. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the works that you presented for that exhibition and some of the ideas that you were exploring in that show?
So the show is titled We the People. I think that the exhibition with me and Aminah Robinson, first off, Aminah Robinson, to even be in a space with her work is crazy. And I also am appreciative of ACA Galleries to see the connection between her work and my work. The works that are in the show deal with identity, like most of my pieces. They deal with the way that I see people. I think it's really important to tell stories about the everyday person, and the people that are depicted within the exhibition are people that I know or people that I get to know. There is one self-portrait that's in the show that's actually the flyer for the exhibition, and that one is called Las Dos Candis, and it is an homage to Frida Kahlo's Las Dos Fridas, where she talks about her identity and the two versions of her identity coming together. So that's a significant piece, I think, that's in the exhibition. And the works that are there are things that I've created this year and also last year. So they're pretty current.
Yeah. Thank you for grounding us in that sort of framing and a bit of that back history. I think it might be nice just for the moment to really dig into what you mentioned about having your work in conversation with Aminah Robinson. This is the first time that's happened that you all are showcasing work together. Can you speak a little bit about the impact that's had on you and maybe your thinking around your work being in conversation with Aminah?
One of the things that I really liked about her work and also Faith Ringgold is that they're also painters and they like to experiment with a lot of different materials. Like fiber is important, but it wasn't like one of the first things that they've created. Like we all I believe, start off with drawing. And a lot of their work has that line work and the painterly quality of both of those women, and also being Black and also being American and other inside of this space, gave me a way of seeing that my work can also be in a space and can also be respected in a place like New York, right? So I was born in Bayonne, but I moved down to Miami. And I've been living in Florida for most of my life. And New York is like the place when it comes to the arts. And it's still like that. I think that it's slowly changing, but it's still, you're showcasing your work in New York. And to see these two women inside of this space in this gallery that's really talking about narratives of our community, I think is something special. And I'm just honored to be in a space where their works have been and where they have been. It's an honor.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned Faith Ringgold, sending, just like we lost such an incredible talent and somebody who was really groundbreaking and monumental in so many ways, but also comes from a lineage and a history of women artists of color working in craft. And so there's this history that can be pulled on in works like Faith's work and similarly Lila's work. And I think it must be really just so wonderful to be centered around that history, within that history, and thinking of your work in the contemporary moment. So I'd like to shift a little and talk a little bit more about some of the ideas that you investigated in that show, We the People, and what were you thinking about in bringing that imagery to the forefront and presenting the people, and also in some regard, some of the places that are depicted in the works.
I'm a portrait maker is what I like to describe myself as, just because I don't work in fibers. I paint, I print make, I collage, I photograph. Like, there's a lot of other mediums. I'm doing stained glass work, infused glass work, but it's always portraiture. It has always been portraiture for me. Since I've started creating, that's the one thing that really grasped my attention. It was one of the more difficult things to do, and I feel like I function well when I am dealt with issues. Portraiture was one of the more difficult things to do in comparison. Well, I don't want to say that because I know the landscape artists are going to come out and be like, hey, but portraiture is really difficult, and I just gravitated towards that. I didn't notice the kinds of people that I was creating until I got to undergrad, when I was asked, why are you creating people from your community? And I was just like, what are you talking about? I'm just creating people. There's no particular race or kind of person. And they're like, Kandy, you need to like look at the art that you're making. There is a reason why you're creating what you're creating. So by the time I got to grad school, it was a lot of reading about race. It was a lot of reading about identity, a lot of reading about the history of different materials and the significance of that material and the metaphors that come from that in the work. So my work is about people and it's about community. So having a title like We the People, it puts it all into perspective. And it's also an election year. So that's something that the gallery curator like really thought about while she was picking the title for the show.
Yes. It might be nice to dig a little bit deeper into the individual people that you're highlighting. And you mentioned earlier that these are folks that you either know or have a connection to or relationship with. They're not just abstract figures that you're pulling from. Some artists pull from imagery, they pull from archives, they create figurative works of people that are even in fact made up from several different images and then creating something brand new. The folks in your work, however, are real people in the real world right now. And so how do you make those kinds of artistic decisions in terms of who gets represented and maybe why?
I want to go back to the other question you asked about the cityscapes too. I answer that. Like I said, I was born in Jersey, in Bayonne, next to Jersey City, and I moved to Miami, specifically Hialeah, when I was 8 or 9, which is another city, and then moved to Miami Gardens, which is also like another city within Miami or inner city. So I've grown up in cityscapes. The cityscapes that are depicted on some of the pieces are made up because I've created so many cityscapes in life. Like, it's been 25 plus years of making art for me. I started like really young. So I understand cityscapes and the way that they are put together and gentrified lost, and then we go through the same process over and over again. The people that I'm depicting are either family members or friends of friends, or people that end up coming into the art shows or exhibitions and they have this kind of swaggy outfit on, or like this sense of confidence. They just take the air out of the room, is how I describe it, where I want to get to know who they are. Like, I don't feel like I'm a fashionable person, but I appreciate somebody who has thought about what it is that they're wearing and what they're putting on to step out of the house, like this armor. It's more like they're feeling their best in this outfit. And it might bring attention or it might not. But I enjoy being around people that have that kind of armor.
Yeah, definitely. What led you to work within the space of the medium that you're currently working in? And maybe the iterations of your practice that sort of led you here.
Okay, so I went to a magnet middle school and I chose art because I wanted to be with my best friend in middle school and she chose dance. I did dance in elementary school in a magnet school. When ballet was introduced and all the stretching, I was like, yo, this is not going to work for me. But I wanted to be with my best friend. So I chose art because I like to listen to music, but I didn't want to play any instruments. And I'm not good at acting. You can read my face. So art was like the last resort. I believe that I fell in love with it in 7th grade, where I felt like all of the technical aspect of creating was finally clicking for me after like a year and a half of my teachers like trying and trying. So I felt really comfortable drawing. Like, drawing was my number one baby. And then I was introduced to oil paints. And once I got a hold of an oil paint set, I was like, oh, this is it. It's easier to blend skin tone. It takes a while to dry, so I can rework an area days later when I have the time to do it. So I really fell in love with oil painting. But in middle school and in high school, we were given the ability as students to play with different materials. So ceramics, printmaking, like lino cuts, darkroom photography. I love darkroom photography, which they don't teach at the university that I'm at currently. But I just love the smell of the developer too. 3D art, sculpture. We tried all kinds of things. And I think that the ability to try those things really propelled my needs to find materials that challenge me. And I was working on print and collaging for a while, like after grad school, to get a break from painting, to be honest. And a piece of thread fell on one of my collages, and I was like, oh, I don't have to draw the power line for my cityscapes anymore. Like, the thread is literally connecting my papers together. So now there's an extra metaphor that's within the work. So I did a few of those where the threads were creating the power lines and wrapping around the collages and the paper that I was creating these cityscapes. And so I went to Michael's and they had a sale and there was a piece of canvas. I'm a painter. So I'm like, oh, you can literally embroider a cityscape with thread. Okay, I'm going to buy it. It was on sale. Brought it home. I tried it. It was bad. I tried it again. It was still terrible. So I was like, maybe I need like more space. So then Trayvon Martin got murdered along with the other plenty of young Black men. And I wanted to make a statement. So I researched online and there was this thing called a hook rug mesh, which is what you would use to create rugs. So I said, I'm going to make a piece. It's going to be an African-American man, and it's going to be in black and white, like a photograph. So I'm thinking about like a nostalgia and fading away. And the first person that I picked was my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time. And I made a portrait of him, 7 feet tall, and it was to be placed on the floor. So it came out all right, in my opinion. People still love the piece, but I'm just like, it's one of the first ones that I've made. And people were so hesitant to step on him. And I wish that I had a video to show like people walking around the piece, because usually you're not supposed to touch art, you're not supposed to mess it up. But the whole purpose of it was for it to start fading. Like all the stories of our background and our history and police violence, like we slowly fade. Like we're the it thing for the moment, and then all of a sudden something else happens, and then that other thing is the it, and you totally forget that was somebody's father, that was somebody's brother, that was someone's son. And then I made a second piece like that of my husband's best friend, that's Rohan, and then I left it alone. This is a really long answer to your question.
I love it. I love it. No, please.
So I left it alone, and then I started painting and collaging and drawing again. And then we ended up buying a house. I got a full-time job, and it was time to decide if we were going to have children or not. So we decided to have a child, and then I couldn't paint anymore because of the solvents, and I couldn't print make anymore because of the solvents. So I was like, I did try to do the thread thing. Let me see how it would look like if it's in color instead of black and white, because most of my work is like really vibrant colors. So I got a residency in 2021, my first residency. My daughter was a year old, almost a year old. And I was like, okay, I think I can do this. So I went on the residency and I created the first piece in color. And I was like, this is exciting. And that was it. Like, it was fiber work. I would still paint. I'm still collaging. I'm still like playing with other materials. But the fiber like connected so much because of the metaphors that's behind it, because of the history, because of the people that came before me, because of what fiber does for us, wraps us. It's also discarded in Goodwill. And sometimes I go shopping and give it a new life, which is sometimes the background of my pieces. You will see like a cityscape. Those are all discarded clothing from thrift stores or Goodwill or the Salvation Army. I'm thinking about all those things as I'm creating the work.
That's how we get to the heart of it. We need you to have that like deep, long answer. Unless outside of that, it's like, how are we going to really know about you and your practice? So right. I love a long-winded answer. You work in several materials, from your tapestries and fiber work to paintings to collage to print to stained glass. And I'd really love to talk about a project that you did a little bit earlier this year, earlier in 2024, down in Miami at the Arlo Hotel. I used to live in Miami. I'm such a Miami fan. Yeah, it's a place that really has a special place in my heart. I spent some time in Miami during COVID and only left because it got crazy expensive and developers came and bought the place that I was living at. But if none of that had happened, I would still have my spot in Miami because I'm a water girl. So I just need to be by the ocean. And I was living right off the beach. And so it was really wonderful for me to just be able to walk 2 blocks in the morning, in the evening, at literally any single time of the day and just be by the ocean. Yeah, it's something that I feel is super regenerative and super generative, super therapeutic, and also just like connects you to the fact that we are this ecosystem of the world that we live in. And you can't really, when you look out into a body of water, you can't really separate yourself from that thing, right? It makes you, I think it slows things down and gives you this opportunity to really reflect. But anyway, I'd love to talk about the work that was commissioned by Arlo Winwood, by the hotel, and the project that you did with them, because I know there was some stained glass works that you did for the hotel. So can we speak a little bit about those?
Yeah, so I started experimenting with stained glass when I'm like my time. I think it was last year. I don't think it was 2020. Maybe I started playing with it in 2022, and then 2023 was when I did my residency at Nakan, which is in Samana in Santo Domingo in Dominican Republic. I always wanted to play with glass, like cutting it and putting it together, because it brings up a lot of art history and what I didn't see in art history books, and which I feel like are out there. They have just not been, quote unquote, discovered, or it has been eliminated. So I didn't see people that look like me in stained glass work, because all of the stained glass work that I've researched and saw while I was going to school were religious pieces, right? So we get all the religious stories and they're all like at churches. That's my view and history of stained glass. I also like glass because it's transparent. There's different textures within it. Vulnerable, but also extremely strong. You can mold it if it's a lot of pressure, aka if it's too much heat. Like, I like the idea of the material of glass. I have painted on glass before, but I have not created a piece from it or used it in that moment. So I applied for a grant from my county. So Broward County has a artist grant. It's called the Broward County Cultural Division Innovation Artist Grant. I applied with a proposal to create stained glass pieces and to display them in a space in Broward where the community is a minority community. So the proposal was approved. I got the funds. I applied to the Nakan residency. I got in, which I was super excited about. So me and my family went to Dominican Republic. We were in Samaná for about a month, and I was in a little glass concrete box inside of this hotel, which was called like the Unique Hotel, which is basically like a hotel in the middle of, it's not a jungle, but it's like in nature. That's also by a beach. It's beautiful. Nakan, Nacan. I wanted to create works about the people that worked in the touristic environment of Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and specifically Samaná. So I went out and I took pictures of people within that part of the island, and I got to know them. I asked them a million questions, recorded them, took pictures of them, printed it out, gave them pictures because they rarely have pictures of themselves. And it was a really nice, it felt like home, which I have a hard time feeling sometimes in Dominican Republic because I'm American and I am like foreign here, but I'm also foreign there. So there's like this va-y-veng energy, like coming and going and not really belonging in a space. And I wanted to capture that within the stained glass works. And I feel like a lot of people in Miami relate to that. There's a lot of tourism here. There's also a lot of people that come from different spaces and countries and islands. So I think that they would have connected to this idea of coming and going and being and not being. And I feel like the glass works and also the prints that were there speak to that nature in that exhibition.
And as we round out the episode, is there anything that you're just coming off the heels of this show and we're winding down, the year's coming to an end, we have this crazy election, and Miami Basil's going to be coming up soon. Is there anything, any projects that you're working on or things that are coming up for you that are bringing you a lot of inspiration right now? And in terms of what you're thinking about in maybe the next bodies of work that you're interested in creating?
Yes. So I have a few things. I have an exhibition that's going to be at Macon, Georgia University, and it has to deal with this idea that I talked about. It's titled va-y-veng as well. And it's going to showcase like my older works, like my drawings, my sketchbooks, something that it's more tactile and not on quote unquote complete, and also the newer pieces that I'm making. So I'm excited about that. I'm also trying to finish my Hispaniola series, which has to deal with wearing the traditional Caribbean dress. And it also talks about colorism. It talks about Haiti versus Dominican Republic, the togetherness of it, and also the non-togetherness of it, the issues that happen within the islands. And it's not only that island, it's like all the islands in the Caribbean because of the conquistadores that came in and the mixing of everyone. So that's something that I'm thinking about and dealing with. I'm also creating a series of Dominican dolls. So I'm excited about that because it's going to be fiber. And in my head right now is 2D, but it might be 3D, which makes me feel uncomfortable. So I know that I'm going in the right direction. And I'm also dealing with fused glass. So I'm trying to invent something new within glass. And all my experimentations are leading up to something. I just haven't figured out how to put those things together, but I'm excited for it. So there's a lot of projects that are in my head, which makes me excited because there's always something to do.
I love that. Yeah, you're keeping yourself busy and continuing to push yourself, challenge yourself clearly with your use of material, which I think is just awesome and brilliant. And I love that there are so many different ways in which you're thinking about your practice and thinking about how you're creating the ways that you're creating your own visual language through all of these different mediums. And so excited to see what continues to develop for you and how you continue to push your practice and grow as a creator, as a teacher, as a mother, and as a person who's sharing your ideas with the world.
Thank you so much.
This has been such a wonderful episode. And to all the folks listening, just keep a lookout for Kandy G Lopez for all of her new upcoming projects and works. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much.
That was my episode with Kandy G Lopez. I want to give a big thank you and a big shout out to Kandy for joining me on the show. And it's a wrap, folks. That was our episode of Everything is Connected, conversations on culture and current events with some of today's hottest creative contemporaries. These episodes are recorded remotely and on location wherever in the world I find myself, whether that be the US, Africa, Europe, the Middle East, the Caribbean, and more. Depending on where I am at the time of these recordings, you will hear the sights and the sounds of my local environment. I look forward to continuing these wonderful conversations with artists and creative professionals across industries with you. I'm your host, Folasade Ologundudu, and we'll see you next time. As always, stay motivated, stay inspired, and stay up. Peace and love, y'all. We out.